We have a guest that's joined us, and before we start our program, we want to get him on as he's just coming from one of our historic Harlem churches. And let me just say this, I have had a chance to work with this man for the last 2 or 3 decades. And since he's become governor, he has turned this state around. 15 years ago, 15 years ago, when Amadou Diallo was shot and killed 41 times. The Speaker, Carl Hastie, and myself introduced a piece of legislation, and Assemblyman Herman Denny Farrell, who is with us here with his daughter, we introduced a piece of legislation that would mandate that anytime anyone loses their life while in the custody of law enforcement, that they would be investigated and prosecuted by either a special prosecutor or the New York State Attorney General. Just this summer, our governor signed an executive order mandating that that indeed would happen. We have lost too many folks from our community at the hands of law enforcement, and our governor felt that there needs to be transparency, openness, and we need to give the public a sense of comfort, a sense of reassurance. So when he signed that executive order, I just started crying. Because for 15 years, I've put forth this legislation. It would pass in the Assembly, but wouldn't go anywhere else. I think the governor deserves a standing ovation for signing that executive order mandating that he ain't stopping there yet. Minimum wage, $15 an hour. $15 an hour. Both the Speaker, Carl Hastie, and myself have been authors of that minimum wage bill. But it takes a governor to help put this into action. Without any further ado, no stranger to the African American Day Parade breakfast, I give to you your governor, our governor, my governor, Governor Andrew Cuomo. Here.
Thank you. Good morning. It is a great morning. First, to Assemblyman Keith Wright, he said we've been working together for 2 or 3 decades. That is a long time, 2 or 3 decades. I remember Keith, he had all dark hair. It's funny, I think I look exactly the same way I looked 2 or 3 decades ago. But Keith, he's looking older. That's what I said.
Thanks, Governor.
Give Keith a big round of applause. He's doing the greatest work of his life. We have an all-star cast here. We have the brand new Speaker of the State Assembly who just did a great session. He's going to do even more. Carl Hastie, pleasure to be with him. We have our great public advocate, Tish James. Assemblyman Denny Farrell, a pioneer. Assemblyman Robert Rodriguez is here. Controller Tom DiNapoli. We have our great New York City Controller, Scott Stringer. Stand up and smile. Smile more, Scott. A little more. Scott doesn't like to smile. He doesn't want to get wrinkles in his face. I'll tell you, I love coming to the breakfast. I love the energy. I love the commitment. And I love the vision that is shared at this breakfast year after year after year. We had a great legislative session this past year. We did more to protect tenants than had been done in modern political history when it comes to abusive landlords and paying rent. We passed a sexual assault bill. But I'm really excited about what we're going to do next year. Because as Keith said, one of the hottest issues that we had to deal with was the issue of appointing a special prosecutor. Now, Keith had talked about this for a long time. Shh. I'll be brief if you are quiet. If you talk, I am going to talk and talk and talk. Keith Wright had the vision to say we needed an independent voice in criminal justice. You have had the same case that has been repeating itself in New York and across the nation, where we have a member of the minority community who winds up dead and is often unarmed, and there's a sense that the police department was unfair and that the criminal justice system does not do justice because it was biased towards the police because the district attorney handles the case and the district attorney has a close connection with the police department. That has gone on for many, many years. That's the Eric Garner case, it's the Ferguson case, it's LA, it's all across the country. And Keith came to me this year and he said, we have to do something about this. And I looked at him and I said, Keith, this one is a tough one because you're going right at the heart of the criminal justice system. He said, I know, but we can do it and we should do it. And you know what? We did do it. This state is the only state in the nation where if an unarmed person is killed, or if there's a question as to whether or not the person is killed, is armed, the district attorney doesn't handle the case. It's given to a special prosecutor by operation of executive order, the Attorney General of New York, who has no conflict with the police department, so we'll know that justice is done once and for all, and that there's no relationships, there's no conflicts, and we'll begin to restore trust between the minority community and the police department and the justice system, which is what this is all about.
Yeah.
We also have to do more on the issue of gun violence and gun safety. This is a plague. We passed the toughest law in the nation, in the state of New York, called the SAFE Act. And I want to give Keith and Carl and Crystal and Adriano a big round of applause for passing that law. But it's not enough because the guns aren't coming from this state anymore. They're coming from Virginia, they're coming from down south, and they're bringing the guns in. And a state law isn't enough. We need federal action. We have the reminders every week, every week, every week. This past week, there was a young man who worked for me in my office named Carrie Gabay. Carrie Gabay grew up in the Bronx in the projects. He is the American dream. He put himself through Harvard University. He was at a top-flight law firm. He didn't feel rewarded. He came to state government because he wanted to give back. 43 years old, he was in Brooklyn. The night before the West Indian Day Parade, a random bullet hit him in his head. He's dead. A more beautiful person you couldn't find. He did absolutely nothing wrong. The madness has to stop. It has to stop in Washington. We have to tell those federal officials, stand up and show the political courage to do something about gun violence once and for all. And the next issue we're going to tackle this session, which I'm very excited about, is probably the single best thing we can do for this city and this state. And that is to raise the minimum wage. You want to talk about growing income inequality and the fact that the working people are getting left behind? You're right. Middle class is going backwards. It's harder and harder to work your way out of poverty. The answer is the minimum wage. And government sets it. FDR started the minimum wage. And the purpose of the minimum wage by FDR was a wage that provided a decent living. Not a living where you can scrape by, a decent living. Because if you worked full time, you were supposed to be out of poverty. Minimum wage today is $8.75. You cannot live on $8.75 in New York. The numbers don't add up. You cannot afford a family. And it's even worse. You go to McDonald's, you make $8.75 an hour. You are still below the poverty line. So people come to government, and they qualify for food stamps and welfare. So now, government, you are subsidizing McDonald's workforce. McDonald's made $4 billion last year. They don't need us subsidizing their workers. They should pay their workers a fair and decent wage. The New York State Assembly, Keith, Carl, everybody who's here, we're going to stand tall. We want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, the highest in the United States of America, and send a signal all across this state and this country. We're not taking it anymore. It's unfair. It's wrong. It's getting worse. This was about opportunity for all, a lack of discrimination for all. Let's live up to that promise. The minimum wage is the best way to do it. We're going to get it done next year. Thank you, and God bless you.